Hi everyone, so by popular demand we're going to be doing card 2 today, which is this little one here. I've added a few little extras in here, so we've put some little sort of ferny bits just hanging down inside the little cave there, and we've also put some little lights on here. So that's the one we're going to be making, or something at least similar. You never end up with two the same. I'm going to use our little rural wall. We're also going to be using the little wellies and some of the little trailers out of the Rosy Retreat. We're going to be using the little tree in the fence post out of the vintage Vista. We're going to be using a little bit of the grass out of the textures collection. Now the little lanterns, no, any lantern that you've got will do, it doesn't really matter, but I'm using the ones out of the warm window. And then we're using the little brolly out of the blooming brollies, and of course our Oriental Blossom as well. So what we've done here, we've taken a 6x6 card and I've just masked out the very edges here. And then what I've done is torn a little bit of paper here. So this is just going to be where our snowy hill is. So this little bit here, we want to create the cave. So we want this part. I've just torn this little bit out here. And we're going to use this to mask out a little area in the middle here. So that is where our little entrance to our little cave is going to be. So we're going to start by adding some colour. So because the stencils, you always have a little bit of white where the stencil needs to be held together. I kind of don't really like the white, so I always try and get rid of some of that if we can. It doesn't matter what shape your little cave is either. I'm just adding a little bit of background colour here. And don't forget, we can add more afterwards if we want. So bear in mind when you're doing your little scenes, you always want to make sure that wherever you're going to be putting some of your other stamps, you leave sort of at least a little bit of space where your ink might be a little bit paler, because you can always add a little bit more afterwards. It's not the end of the world. So just add. You never end up with two cards the same as well, and actually that is kind of something that I really like about this as well. You don't want everything to be exactly the same. So we just added some little bits of colour just along that hillside, just a little bit in the background. Like I said, we can always add a little bit more. Now in the sample that I posted online, I did use the Chateau Grey, which I'm using now. But I do find, because it's quite creamy, that when you come to stamp over the top of it, sometimes you can get a little bit of it showing through. So I'm going to use a little bit around the edges, but where we're going to do most of the other design, I'm going to use a little bit of the Morning Mist Versacolor. So around these edges here, and I want this a little bit darker here so it shows it up as well. That's the other thing, Morning Mist is a little bit darker. And we're just going to run around the edge of the little entrance to the cave like that. Okay, just make sure there's no ink on there that I'm going to pick up with my fingers, because you'll know how messy I am. And then we can start with our little bit of brickwork. So I've just put a little bit of tape on there just to hold it in place, and just make sure you're covering all those little edges here so you're not got sort of halfway down your card. And then I'm going to use again a little bit of the Morning Mist, and we're just going to start to work through those bricks. So you don't want this too dark. If you want to use a brush, you can, but these are quite decent size openings, so it's quite easy to work with your finger. And then just let this fade out, because remember, we're going to be having a lot of foliage and things coming around the outside, so this doesn't really matter. Just make sure you can actually see where your cave is. It's one of the reasons why we decided to go just a little bit darker, because then you can actually see this little cave side a little bit more clearly. So you see as well what I'm doing, I'm starting on that paper in the middle. And then we can just soften it out as it gets to those edges here. Now if you don't want to go all the way to the edge, you don't have to. It's entirely up to you. But just a little bit of brickwork so you can see that in the background there. And again, always working from that middle section. And I think that will probably just about do us. So we can see our little wall there. I'm going to pop my little bit of paper back there. That's my snowy hill. And then again, we're just going to work off the edge like that and just blend any ink that we've got that's damp, and just blend that back in. So I'm going to go back to the Chateau Grey now, because again we want a nice soft ink, so we don't want this too dark. And again, I'm going to leave this area here because we know we're putting our wellies and things down there, So I don't want anything too dark. But we can see how these bricks show up really, really well now. Like that. And of course, anywhere where you want to put light. So for instance, if we wanted to put a little Christmas tree in and put some light behind it, then don't put too much grey there. We can always add a little bit around the outside later. Okay, so there's our background. Excuse me. Right, so what we're going to do is start to add in our little features now. So I'm going to just pop in our little Wellington boots and things. But first, we're just going to take off this little mask where our little cave has been here. Like that. Pop our little bit of paper back. And then we're just going to add a little bit of shade just across that line there, just to make sure that we've got that hillside in place there. So just along the line like that. And that'll give us that lovely sort of snowy hill when we take that away later. So we can add a little bit of shade in there as well if we want. So we're just softening the whole thing off like that. Okay, so that's pretty much our background done. Let's add some yellow. So this is Canary and Camelia, and we're going to pop those on the inside. So make sure you've got a nice clean part on your baby wipe here. Just straighten that up a little bit so we can see. And then we're going to go into the middle here. So anywhere where that light is going to hit. So condense it sort of where your lantern's going to hang. Then we're just going to add a little bit more colour. And spread it out. It doesn't matter if you go over the grey. So you want it to sort of get paler and paler as it gets further out. And keep the intensity sort of in the middle. Like that. Just blend that outwards onto the little bricks and things as well. And then we want a little bit of red. So a little bit of red in there. Now you see I've got rid of some of that red before we're taking it on. It's far better if you put a little tiny amount on first and blend that in, because a lot of the time you don't need it too dark. Okay, so just about there like that. Okay, so we can start to add in our little details now. So what I'm going to do is add in our little Wellington boots and our little brolly. And we're just going to do these in black. So this is going back to our Versacolor, the Nocturne. And we're just going to take it just sort of down underneath that little hill here at the bottom. Like that. So it'll almost be sort of stuck in that snow. Like that. Okay, and then we're going to do the same with our little wellies. So just alongside the little brolly in that opening. And we're going to pop those about there. So these are, again, are going to be just sort of underneath that snowy hill as well that you've got in front there. So you'll see part of that welly will be going down. Doesn't really matter whereabouts that is. So we're going to add our little fence in now as well. So this one, I mean, don't worry about the fact that it's not going to quite meet there, because we can fill that in with bits of greenery and grasses and things later. So it is not a problem. That is what I love about these, the fact that we can just mix them all together and blend them all in. You don't need to be frightened of any space that you might have there. So let's take that, I've just took it down at a slight angle and pop that one in there. So let's get the other side of the fence now, and we'll do this one. Actually, let's put our tree in and we'll put a bit of colour behind there. So again, this is me. I'm just sort of deciding to put a little bit of colour behind the tree as well. So we'll go just about here where we know our tree is going. We'll sort of take this to the end here. So you could do lots of different colours, but I've only got my yellow and my red with me at the moment. So we're just going to do a little bit of warmth for the tree. So just in that area there, like that. And let's take our little tree and we'll stamp that one in first. So let's take that one about there, like that. So there's our little tree with some light behind it. And then I think I'm going to take my fence a little bit further down on this one. So I'm just going to make sure we've got a nice amount of grey across the top. So I think I might use, now Laura always uses the Versacolor black because it's really, really intense. It's beautiful. So I'm just going to add Or at least I think she does. I don't want to speak for Laura. But just add a little bit more shading along that edge there. And also we can add some of those little trailers, but we'll do them the other way up. So let's just do these in a grey. And we'll just add these. So they just sort of go in the background there. So this is what I was saying about fillers and things like that. It really doesn't matter if you don't join things up completely. And I never end up with two cards the same, which I don't mind. Quite like that. So if you see here, if we just take that off now, there's not a lot of shade in there, so I'm going to add a little bit more so that hill really stands out against that backdrop here. It's always better to be a bit cautious than to overdo it, I think. Okay, that should probably do us. And then across there, let's just add a few little bits of grasses and things as well. So you can do second and third generation stamping with this. Let's get some kind of quite dark ones, and then we'll just let that run out there like that. And again, a little bit of grass maybe. So from your textures set, let's just add that in as well, and maybe alongside where the little fence is there as well, like that. And then we're going to peel that one off. That gives us our lovely little snowy hill there. And what we're going to do is just move this along and just add some shadow. Now you should have enough ink between a bit that you've got on your finger already and what you've actually got on the edge of this paper as well. So we can just blend off the edge like that until we're happy with what we've got. And then we can just move this down and just keep going until you're happy with the amount of snowdrifts that you've got here. So make sure you keep it sort of quite random, because you don't want them all to look exactly the same. So sometimes it pays to use different pieces of paper as well. So you're not just using the same edge all the time. But put some little ones in as well, like that, so you can keep it really varied. And the more little drifts you get in there, the more realistic this actually looks. So if I pick a snowdrift, so if I go about here, I'm going to put my fence in at that point there. So let's pop that down and let's get our little fence in. Okay, so let's take this just about here. So we've got this quite dark as well. It's going to go straight in front of our little tree there. Again, we're stamping just over the paper slightly as well. So it's going to look like it's in that snowdrift. There we go. Okay, what I'm going to do with that, I don't know why that, I don't think that bit up. So what I'm going to do is just go over that with a little bit of black, but we'll do that. We'll finish that off later. Again, not the end of the world. Let's fix that up. Let's put a little bit of the grass in front there like that, and then anything that's sort of left over. This is sometimes what you end up doing is just sort of changing just slightly what you're doing. Okay, so then we've got the basis of our card now, and we're going to add in our little light chain here. I'm going to pop that. Let's do it about there, like that. And then we're going to add our little light. So first we need to add our bits of colour. So we can pop those in first. So little balls of colour wherever you want to put a light. And again, just let that spread out like that. We'll have one there, and we'll have one there. And just add as much of as little light as you want, and just try and drag that out just a little bit like that. So a little bit of red, just over the top like that. And then we also need to put all these little lights in and our little lanterns. So I'm going to use the small one, and then we're going to pop our little light in. So I'm going to do this in a grey, so it's not too dark. And again, it doesn't even matter if these don't line up. It's very forgiving. So let's get one about there, and let's get one about there, like that. And then we'll pop our little lantern in as well. So I'm going to use a nice dark black for this one. So let's go about there, like that. Now, if I put my little outer bit of my original mask back, like that, what we can do is add some of those little dangly bits just coming down. So if I'm going to use the black, what we'll do is just off stamp that before we pop that in. So we've just got these tiny little bits just coming down like that. And it just gives that a little bit more texture inside there, like that. Let me take that up a little bit more there. Get some in there on those edges. And just sort of fill that little gap in there like that. Okay, so you can see if you do make any sort of little mistakes, it's quite easy to sort of rectify them. Don't worry too much about it. Okay, so next we're going to add our little bits around the outside. So first I want to add a little bit more shading. So we've got most of our things in there now. So just a little bit of shading around the outside. So for that we're going to use a little bit of the Morning Mist. Now you're going to have some of this black sitting on here, which is okay to use as long as you make sure you've not got too much of it on your finger, because you don't want this too dark. And I've just realised we haven't put our little mouse in. That is kind of a crime, so I'll go back and do that in a second. So let's just work around the outside first and get this darker edging in here. So our first bit of foliage, when we finish this, we're actually going to add this in the Morning Mist, the grey as well. Just so it's not too much black, so you get a more layered look. So let's get our little mouse before I forget to put them in. Again, we'll do them in the black. I'm going to sit him on top of that little welly. So just on top of the little welly boot about there. Like that, as if he's trying to keep warm on that little lantern. And then we're going to add in our little bits of foliage as well now. Not that one. So these two here. So we're going to do those in grey first. So a couple of these. And again, it's very free and easy. It doesn't really matter, because we're doing this in grey, where you stamp them. You just want a lovely soft sort of backdrop. And I think I used them as well at the bottom. So you can turn this the other way up. But just keep over stamping. Remember, we've got that lovely white edge. So when we take this off later, you've got that beautiful white edge all the way around the outside. So don't be frightened of adding a little bit of detail to this around the edges. Like that. Let's put a little bit just around the bottom as well to really frame it. And then we're going to start with the Oriental Blossom. So again, we're just using the layering technique. So we're going for the black now. So I'm going to start to add the black around the outside. So just like this, we'll give it an extra added layer. So I'll keep it away from the little tree there. Okay, so at the moment it's looking a little bit heavy because we've actually got all of the black and all of the tape still in place. So what we're going to do is just wipe off some of that excess black. So I'm just going to take all of this off the edge like that, because if you start trying to rub that in as well, you're going to get an awful lot of black. Although you do want the edge to be darker, maybe not quite so dark. So just take what you've got left after you've sort of wiped that off onto your scrap and just blend this around the outside to darken those edges. Because obviously the darker it is, the more your white pen is really going to show up on there as well in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of shade into this as well. So I'm just going to add some little bits of extra. This is just a pencil. So I'm sort of a fan of using whatever you've got really. So just sort of take your pencil, just add some little bits of shade into the edges here of any of these bricks that you like. Just sort of brings them out just a little bit. You can blend these with your finger as well, as long as your fingers are clean. And mine never are, at least while I'm crafting. Like that. Just sort of draw a little bit of attention, and maybe just sort of around the outside of this little cave that we've got here with the bricks. Like that. So it just sort of gives it a little bit more attention. So let's do a little bit of white on here now. So these branches here are coming in front of these little lights. So if we just take our white highlighter here and just bring those sort of in front here like that. So it adds a little bit of colour and it just brings them right into the foreground. Anywhere where you've got a little bit of highlight maybe. So I'm not too particular about this. Just like it to look pretty. So entirely up to you. You can sort of decide where the light is coming from and do it in that direction if you want. Entirely up to you. I'm just going to add some little bits of light to these as well and across the string. Make sure that you're not sort of leaning any wet ink as well, because I can hear my hand sort of sticking to the edge of the card here where I've probably got. But then again, I am going quite quickly here. But you can be a little bit more careful. I'm just going to put some little bits of light on here like that. Then you can do little bits of snow. So if you want some little snow drifts, we can add little bits of snow on here like that. So I'm just going to sort of give this a little bit more detail and a little bit of snow just sitting in those little recesses in the little tree branch, in the little fence post there. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Do you ever have those days where sometimes you think you've never stamped before? There we go. So just these little bits here. And then what we're going to do is soften this all off by adding our little bits of snow. So I'm going to do some lovely little blobs of snow. So I always say you need 3 sizes because that is what gives you the dimension in your card. So it helps with that layering effect. So give yourself at least 3 sizes of snow. So I'm doing all my bigger size here. Like that. And make sure you've got some in front of your little animals, in front of your light here. And I've just realised we just need to sort of give the light a little bit of a string to attach to, so we'll do that in a second as well. So this pen really shows up where it's very, very dark. So all those dark areas are really going to benefit from having some of the white pen highlighting those areas like that. Once you've done that, you're just going to dot over the whole thing. So as soft, this will make it as soft as you want. So you can really soften up those little edges and things. But I love the way we can see those bricks nice and clearly now. Just by using the darker ink there. I do apologise if I've been a bit flaky today. So just some little bits like that, and again wherever you want them and as soft as you like. I'm going to stop now, but I will probably add a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is just peel off this tape so it gives us our lovely nice clean border here like so. And then what we can do is add a bit of sparkle, because we can't really have a Christmas card without a little bit of sparkle. So where you've got your little tree there, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn this paper over here so it's a little bit cleaner. So we've got our finished card just about there. And then we're going to add a little bit of sparkle to this and a little bit of glossy accents. So I'm going to use, actually, on the little tree, we're going to pop a little bit of stickles on there as well. So I'm going to go with a little bit of gold. I think gold is probably all we're going to need. Maybe a bit of gold and a bit of green. Doesn't matter which gold, really. So I'm just going to dot just some little dots over the top of our tree here. This works really well with the light because it looks like you've got a little bit of light just catching that tree there as well. Let me just tie that lantern up there before we actually forget. Maybe a little bit of green, just as if where the light is just showing a little bit of the green tree, like that. And then what we're going to do is do some sparkle, and then we're going to do our glossy accents last. So I'm just going to work over the top of here. And if you wanted to, on these little edges here, you can have little bits of grass just poking through. So let's just do that, and then we're going to dot over the whole card. So we've got a little bit of snow just sort of coming down, falling down around the little design like that. So let's pop this in I've done it again. I've left my glamour dust downstairs. Okay, let's go with stickles. I don't know what it is about that glamour dust. I keep leaving it behind. So let's just use a little bit of stickles instead. Do you know, ladies, not my day. You do get them, don't you? Let me just unblock this. Okay, let's try it again. So just let's do some little dots. Like I said, normally I've already put the glue on there for my glamour dust. But we'll just use a little bit of stickles instead. Not the end of the world. Let's just do a little bit just under here. Like that, to give ourselves a lovely bit of sparkle. It's beautiful, is the stickles. This is crystal. Just do some little bits just there like that. Just do a few more bits here. Like that. I knew I'd forget something. Okay, so a little bit of glossy accents now. And we're just going to pop that onto our little lamp here in the middle. So this will just dry shiny and raised. It just gives you a beautiful effect at the end here. So again, I do apologise, everybody, for being a bit flaky today. I don't know what is the matter with me. But there we go. There is our little finished card here. So I hope you liked it. I hope it made sense, and I'm really sorry again. Okay, take care, everybody. Thank you very much.